Okay guys, this time we are going to be covering animation within Premiere, and we're going to be mainly covering it within the effects control panels over a few items that are going to be basically the effects that are native or inherent to every individual clip or file that you drag into a timeline. Now, first of all, I've got some files here. I've got this USA map that is about 5K. It's about 4800 by 3140 that I've imported into the project. When you import these into the project, by the way, first of all, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be editing in a 1920 by 1080 timeline, so a smaller resolution than this, which is good because I can zoom up on these images without losing a significant amount of quality, because I've got about 5K of resolution versus a 2K, near a 2K timeline. So what you want to do when you import files is you go into Preferences in General, and you will make sure that your default scale to frame size is unchecked. Because if this is checked, what will happen when you drag those images into a timeline is it will downscale the images to fit the timeline, and it will decrease the quality. And then when you zoom up on them, if you want to zoom up closer to the image, you will see a quality loss. I covered this in the last episode. So I'm going to hit OK. I have already imported these files while that was unchecked. So this file right here is a full resolution that is not going to be downscaled. I'm going to go down to my new item icon. I'm going to create a new sequence, and I'm going to go under DSLR here. I'm going to make it 1080p because I'm working in 1080p items for a regular television. If you're in Europe, you'll probably want to use 25 frames per second. If you're in the United States, either 30 frames per second, or if you want to do film style, you'll do 24 frames per second. You name your sequence down here if you wish, just hit OK. And there is my 1920 by 1080 sequence that shows up in the preview area. If your preview area is not showing, go to this little drop down and check mark preview area. It will show the attributes for that timeline and for clips that you selected down in your project window. So now that I've got that selected, I'm going to grab this USA map. I'm going to drag and drop it into my timeline. And you'll notice that it has, here is the image, the same image that is in my source monitor. This is an entire map of the United States, but here it has zoomed up to it because this is a 5K image dropped in a 1920 by 1080 timeline, and this is now zoomed up because this is higher resolution than the timeline. If I had checkmarked this scale to default size, it would basically scale this down, and then when you zoom back up on it, it would lose resolution. So this is the best way to go. So I've got this image in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom up to certain parts of the United States here. So I'm going to, first of all, zoom out. I'm going to, let's make this clip about 10 seconds long, or actually about 20 seconds long for a good animation here. I'm going to hit Shift plus to increase my size of my track, and I'm going to hit the slash key above the return key, the backward slash, so it fits my whole timeline within the viewable space here. So I have some area to work. Now, with this clip selected here, I'm going to go up to Effects Controls, and I'm going to look at the motion here. What I want to do, first of all, is I want this to show the entire, I want this to begin zoomed out to show the entire USA map. I'm going to arrow down, and I'm going to go to Scale, and I'm going to zoom this out. Here, I'm going to click and drag. If you haven't watched my previous episode on how to do this, go back and watch it. I'll describe how to work the scale and rotation and position and whatnot. But I'm going to zoom out just enough to where this fits into my entire image right there. So let's say that I want to zoom into the amazing state of Utah, because that's where I'm from, so of course it's amazing. If you don't think it's amazing, look up shots of like Moab and Zion and the Wasatch Mountain Range, and you'll see some really beautiful desert areas and some really beautiful mountainous areas as well, some gorgeous places. So it's a great place to visit, great place to come out and do anything from hiking to skiing to rock climbing to water skiing, a whole bunch of different places. Okay, I'll stop advertising this day. Anyway, so say we want to move up to the state of Utah. So here I'm going to go to my timeline, and I'm going to play for a little bit. And right there we have some narration going. It's like, welcome to the United States, where you can visit the state of Utah. Something stupid like that. Some narration that we're doing in a documentary. And it's going to zoom up to the state right here. Couple things that we're going to have to change is we're going to have to change position, and we're going to have to change scale. Because watch what happens. We've got our anchor point right now set at 2400 and 1570, which is basically dead center in the middle of the states. Here I'm going to go over and click on my little motion wireframe, and you can see where the anchor point is placed. It's placed right there, dead center in the middle of the map. Right in Kansas there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to animate position and scale, because watch what happens when we scale. When we grab this little icon, or when we grab the scale attribute here, click and drag to the right, it will zoom up, and it will zoom up to the anchor point. So what we're going to have to do is change position and scale as well. So I'm going to undo that, back out to my full frame. So right here what we've done is we're playing into our timeline, and let's say about 3 seconds in, when the narration starts talking about Utah, we're going to zoom up to Utah here. A couple things that we're going to have to change are the attributes on position and scale up here in the motion effects. I'm going to move over my area here and hit tilde and talk about the keyframing area. This here represents the entirety of the clip that is in my timeline. This is the beginning of the clip, this is the ending of the clip. This area here represents time. So you can change position over time and you can change scale over time. Right now I'm around 3 seconds, and that's why I want to start changing scale and position. So over here you have these little toggle animation buttons. This actually turns on your animation abilities, and it will also add the first keyframe for you. If I click on the scale this little stopwatch here, it'll add a keyframe, and now this is blue, and it says scale is ready for keyframing. It's added the first one. This is where the change is going to start. I'm going to go to position and change that as well. I'm going to tilde out of that, and I'm going to play and see how long I want the animation to be. So we're going to play, and about 3 seconds maybe. We're at 6 seconds now, so that's about a 3-frame animation. So now we're going to add keyframes. What these keyframes do is tell the position and the scale on any other of these attributes or parameters what to be at that point in time. So now that I've turned it on and it's added the first keyframes for me, I want to add keyframes right here. It's going to start here and it's going to end here. So I'm going to move over here, and this little item here is an add or remove keyframe. Since there's not a keyframe there already, it's going to add if I click this button. Click. And I'm going to go down to scale and click there as well. So right now my playhead is positioned directly over these keyframes, and the way you land on keyframes is you use these arrows left and right. Right now I can't hit right because there's no keyframes to the right, but I'm going to hit left and it will land on the previous keyframe. If you hit this, it'll land on the next keyframe. If you have other keyframes, let me add a couple here, it'll land on the next keyframe down the line until there are no more keyframes. I'm going to get rid of these. The way you get rid of keyframes is I can click and drag a marquee or just select individual keyframes. Notice how they turn blue. That means they are selected. Now I can hit the delete key and they're gone. You can also copy and paste keyframes once you've changed them. I'm going to select all these, do a Command C or Control C on a PC, move my playhead down and do Command V or Control V, and notice it placed 2 more keyframes down here. I'm going to delete those. I don't need them right now. I'm going to arrow over and land on my second keyframe, arrow over and land on my first keyframe. Right here is where I want this image to be. I want this to play along to this point here, and nothing has happened. So these keyframes, the attributes are staying the same. I'm going to land on my keyframe to the right. Now that I've landed on this keyframe right here, I can change the attributes for this keyframe by moving over and changing position, or moving over and changing scale. Let me tilde out of this. I'm going to grab the scale and I'm going to zoom up. Right there. I'm going to grab my position. So now it has changed the attribute on that keyframe. This keyframe was the beginning. This is kind of like a pivot point here, basically. So once it reaches this point, since this is the same attributes as previous, as the original clip, as I play through, now it does a zoom from this point here to this point here. It is zoomed. So at this point here, if we arrow back, notice it is at 41, and as we arrow forward, it is at 149. It will go from 41 to 149 between these two areas here, within this 3 seconds here. I also want to change position on this keyframe right here, because I want it over in Utah. So I can simply land on that keyframe, which I have done. If you haven't landed on it, you can arrow back and forth. You got to make sure that you land on keyframes, because if you're about 1 frame off, if you're eyeballing it like this and you're 1 frame off and you start changing attributes, it's going to add a keyframe. I just changed an attribute, and now let's zoom up on this and look at that. It has added an extra keyframe because I actually hadn't landed on that keyframe to manipulate that. So if you start changing items where there is no keyframe and the playhead is not landed on a keyframe, watch this. I just changed that, it adds a keyframe. Let me change this, added another keyframe there. It does that automatically. So I'm going to undo those two. I'm going to land on a keyframe, and I'm going to change that position, move it over to Utah. I'm going to change the vertical and horizontal position and get over to Utah. There we go. So now it will zoom and it will change position from these 2 keyframes to these 2 keyframes. Let's go back and look at that. And there it goes. It slowly zooms up to that area there. Now one issue with this is, first of all, let's say I don't want that to go so quickly. Let's say that zooms up too quickly. As we start zooming into Utah, that moves too quickly. I'm going to tilt it over this area here, and what you can do to change how long that transition takes is you can grab the keyframes, these two ending keyframes, and move them further down the line. Now it takes longer for it to complete the transition, and that will move slower. Let's take a look at that. Go to the beginning, press play, and it zooms. Now it takes longer to zoom into the state. And actually I want to change that. I want a little bit more to the left, so I'm going to land on my keyframe here and change my horizontal position a little bit to the left right there. There we go. And if we zoom up here, you will barely see, it's really, really faint, but you'll see this little spline right here moving across. And as it goes through frame by frame, this is where the image lands. This is where the anchor position lands on each one of these keyframes here, and it plays through. Each one of these is playing through a frame, then it goes boop, boop, doot, 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 and it moves across as it zooms in. I'm going to grab my little fit here, and I'm going to zoom out 25 to 25%, and you can actually see the spline path right here as it moves out. Let's rewind here, and when I pause, you can see where that wireframe is and what this is doing. You see that zooming out, and it's following this path right here. And what you'll notice here, it's kind of faint as well. It's kind of tough to see on Premiere. Let me move this to 50%. Is you'll see a little teeny node right there, and you will also see that same little node right there. Very, very faint, very difficult to see. And what these are a Bezier curve. You can grab these little icons right there, and when you mouse over them, you'll see it turn to a circle. Kind of tough to find, but there it is right there. And what you can do is change this path on a curve. You can grab this and drag it down, and you'll notice it's changed the shape of the curve. So the image will start over here, and it will kind of go on this little curve, and it'll make a little bit more of a natural motion in some instances, so you can kind of create this little S curve where now it will go like this, and it will move up and do a curve here. And let's make this extreme so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. I'm going to grab these and move them down like that, and I'm going to stretch that out so it bends the curve. And now let's watch what happens to this animation here as it plays. Now you'll see it kind of moves up and then moves down and then curves back up here. See those curves? That's what the Bezier curves do. It makes it just a slightly more natural look instead of just this direct straight line, which is okay in some instances, but I'm going to undo that because in this instance I don't really need to do that. But that's what that spline is for, and that's what those nodes are right there. Those are your Bezier curves to create a curved path. Okay, but I do want to make this look a little bit more natural. As you notice here, what this does is it basically goes from 0 to 60 in one frame. As you press play, it just immediately starts moving, and as it zooms up, when it hits Utah, it just immediately comes to a stop. And it doesn't look very, very natural. Things like that don't really move in regular life like that. Things gradually come to a stop, so we want that to look a little bit more natural there. So what I'm going to do is change a couple things on the scale and the position here to make it look a little bit more gradual. What we can do is we can right-click on keyframes. I'm going to select both these keyframes. We're going to right-click on it, and we're going to go down to, you have temporal interpolation and spatial interpolation. The only thing you can do on scale is temporal interpolation. We right-click on that. This will just be a temporal interpolation change here because it's time and not necessarily position. Position, you can right-click and you will have spatial interpolation and temporal, based on space and based on time here. And what this will do is you can tell this to ease out of this. As it hits this point, it's going to ease out of that move into the actual movement here. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to the temporal interpolation, and I'm going to tell it to ease out of that. It changes the shape of the keyframe to show that this now has, it's just not a linear, it just doesn't go from 0 to 60 or 0 to whatever in one frame. It basically will be a gradual movement into the position. I'm going to do that on scale as well. I'm going to right click and tell it to ease out there. So now what will happen, let's watch as we play through this. I'm going to tilt over it. You'll notice that it gradually moves in. Instead of this immediate move into the keyframe, it does this gradual. It starts out slowly. You'll notice it is this gradual movement from into the scale attributes and into the position attributes. Watch this. It starts off very slowly and it looks more natural and it moves in. But now my end position, it just comes to a quick sudden stop. So I can do the same thing and tell it to ease in, easing out of this point and easing into this point. I'm going to right click, go to temporal interpolation, and ease into those two keyframes. Now watch what happens as I play through this. As it hits the end, it gradually comes to a stop. And it looks very nice and smooth there. So now we have this shot where it starts out on the United States and gradually moves in to Utah. And that's basic keyframing there. Let's say that we want this somewhere in the middle. What I want to do, let's say it'll go to New York and then over to Utah. So let's say we want this to go over to New York first and then to Utah. So what I'm going to do, let's start these over here. I'm going to turn off my keyframes here to delete those keyframes. And now we're going to start with a full image of the United States right there. 3 seconds in, 1, 2, 3 approximately. I'm going to add my scale and position keyframes. I'm going to play into it a little bit, about 3 more seconds. Right there, I want it to land on New York, so I'm going to scale in. And by the way, one thing that you can do is you can actually click on your little wireframe image here, and it will show a wireframe of your entire state here, of your entire image. I'm going to go out to about 25% so I can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm going to, on the next, this is going to create a keyframe as I start changing. I'm going to change the scale. Good enough right now. Let's zoom up and see what I'm doing. Land on that keyframe. So let's move this over to New York. I'm going to move the position over here and zoom up more and get it exactly where I need it. So now as we play through this, it will do the move and zoom up to New York. I'm going to right click on these 2 keyframes here and make them ease out. I'm going to right click on these 2 here and make them ease in. I'm going to play through. After a few seconds from right there, I'm going to add 2 keyframes because that's where I want it to start and move over, let's say to the state of California this time. I'm going to add 2 keyframes there, and I'm going to move this over. Actually, I can just go to fit 10%, hit on my motion wireframe, and just move this over so I can kind of see what I'm doing to the state of California. And we'll zoom out at that point. Right there. So now we start out in the United States, it zooms into New York, stays there for a few seconds, and then moves clear over to California. Not showing the entire state, but that's the idea there. Each one of these keyframes defines where it's positioned and how it's scaled at what point in time. And you can grab a couple of these here at the same time and make that little pause in between last longer. Or you can make it more of a gradual movement from New York to California there by stretching out the time, or make it faster. Here's kind of a longer move, gradually moves into it. See that? And then it will gradually slow down as it hits California there. There we go. Or you can make it happen really, really fast. Now watch this as it zips over to the state of California. There you go. Now you can also change attributes. Let me bring in another map here. I'm going to drop it right there. One other thing with animation here, let's just show rotation. You can animate any of these attributes that you have up here. We're going to select the clip, change the scale here. Let's start like right here, and we're going to rotate into Kansas. We're going to do some rotation, and we're going to do some zooming. So I'm going to add position and scale keyframes. I'm going to play now. So this is where the animation is going to start, and right there we're going to end. So I'm going to add rotation and scale keyframes here. We're going to start a couple seconds into the shot, and as it plays, say right about there, we're going to end. I'm going to add 2 new keyframes. I'm going to add my rotation and rotate it, say 360 degrees times 2. We're going to do a 360 degree rotation twice. I'm going to change that. 1 times 360. So now you'll notice that rotates twice. There we go, 2 full revolutions. And now on my scale, I'm going to land on that keyframe. Oops, I'm going to land on that keyframe and change my scale to show, let's say we're zooming up to Wichita. So now as we move back, you'll notice it will rotate and zoom in. There we go. And now we can right click on these, ease out, right click on these 2, ease in, and make it look a little more natural. Move out, and now does the animation and it rotates into Wichita. There we go. And make that last a little bit longer by moving those out. Now let's play through that. There we go. And that's basic animation in Premiere. In upcoming episodes, I'm going to show how to do the Ken Burns effect. I'm also going to show how to do multi-clips with, like you'll see in the intro in Ocean's 11, and some other things we'll be showing in future episodes to come. So